Hey everybody. So with the RoboCop remake coming out in the next few weeks or so, and just the whole business of film remakes getting very dominant these days in the film industry. In this video, what I really wanted to talk about is since a lot of people seem to be very, negative and don't seem to really support film remakes. For this video, rather than once again hating on film remakes some more, like most people are doing, and even in some previous videos, I've hated on some film remakes. For this video, what I really wanted to do is kind of go on a more positive note with them and talk about a couple suggestions that maybe future directors can use when it comes to taking on film remakes. These can be things that who knows, maybe some films could get good remakes because of these little tips and advice. But these are some things that I personally came up with that I would like to see more often in film remakes. Because let's be honest, I mean, there's some films out there where if it's not very good to begin with, or if the film had potential, if it had a good concept going for it, then sure, remake it. But if it's a classic, like Jaws or E.T. or anything, obviously don't remake those because those are perfectly fine the way they are. But there's that's kind of the challenge with remakes is how are we going to get this film to be liked by people who like the original? Get new fans, get new people into it, and things of that nature. So there's a lot of there's a lot of challenges that go into remakes as it is. So for this video, what it's really all about is just 5 different big tips I have that maybe could possibly work for a remake. In the end, maybe a good remake could happen because of it. There's even some film remakes that people aren't even aware are remakes, such as Ocean's 11 with George Clooney and Scarface with Al Pacino. Those are both remakes. The Ocean's 11 was once a film starring Frank Sinatra, and Scarface was once a film that Howard Hughes worked on back when he was alive. And Brian De Palma remade it later on, and it starred Al Pacino. And as a result, both films are kind of respected on their own levels when it comes to both Ocean's 11 and Scarface. So that's a really good example of good remakes that were made at some point. But here are my 5 tips that I think could really help film remakes in the future for the most part. For the first one, I think they need to keep the story similar. Don't repeat the story, but make it similar. Definitely make us know that, if it's an Ocean 11 remake, follow the story of Ocean's 11. Make sure it's that story, but don't repeat it. But make sure it's similar in some way. But with that being said, do it in a different fashion. And what I mean by that is look at both versions of Scarface. If you look at the really old version and the one that Brian De Palma did with Al Pacino, they kind of have a shift in tone if you really think about it. I mean, the one with De Palma was a very much a more violent film. It very much emphasized just how dark and evil this character was. The original was more so, this guy that kind of just had an ugly business he was a part of, and so I mean, like it just had a different tone. Like the De Palma one was much more like you feel like you're in this dark place, seeing these dark things go on, and in the Hughes one, we're just kind of following this guy around. We don't exactly have to agree with what he's doing, but there's something a little off about him. And so I think that's kind of the huge difference between those two. And kind of like with Ocean's 11 too, it's like if you look back at the Sinatra version and the one that George Clooney was in, the Clooney one was a little bit more flashier. I thought it definitely was more. I think it definitely emphasized more so the casino stuff from what I remember from the Sinatra version because it's been a while since I've seen the Sinatra version of 11. So, um, then another tip I have, this is tip number 2, do something extremely new with it. And what I mean by that is, so like, with this new RoboCop remake coming out soon, like let's say, obviously that they've already had a vision, they're going to pursue that vision, whatever it is. But like, for example, like keep it a similar story. Let us know and let us visually know that this is a RoboCop story. But maybe the RoboCop has a darker side to him. Maybe like maybe he was a cop that maybe he was a bad guy that slowly became a cop over time. Like maybe change the history a little bit behind the character, or do something that kind of makes it a new experience. And I think that would really help most remakes today, because a lot of them just tend to repeat the exact same film that was made before it. Don't really add any new flair to it or anything. Do something new with it. Just do something that the original didn't do. That's a good thing to do, and make sure it goes into a new direction. And like I was saying in the first tip, make sure it's in a different fashion. Maybe change the tone a little bit, but make sure it's similar too. So that's kind of the challenge of remake is it has to be new, but it also has to be similar, and it also has to be done in a different fashion. And I think in the end, all three of those things are really hard to mesh together when it comes to that. So, and then this is kind of a more like it's done in good fun kind of a thing for the next tip here. For tip number three, have actor and actress cameos from the original film. You know, like let's say, I pray to God they don't do this, but let's say Ocean's 11 was remade once again. Have George Clooney in the film. He doesn't have to be Danny Ocean. Make him a different character. Maybe he's the bartender when they go to the bar in one scene, or like let's say, if I know they've already remade the Karate Kid, but like let's say Ralph Macchio showed up at one point in the movie as a different character. Maybe he was the guy that helped them move at the beginning or something. I think something like that could have been really fun. Um, and also make sure it's done with a playful, we know it's a remake kind of execution. So like they know that they know that they're taking a risk, but they're trying to take a fun risk, and they're trying to do it in good fun. They're doing it in such a way where it's like, we know that this film exists, but here's our interpretation, take it or leave it. We're trying our best with this interpretation, and we hope you enjoy it, but we understand that this original film exists somewhere, and more than likely that film will always be treasured. So, have that playful execution to it. I know I'm not huge on this film, but I know, like, for the Hills Have Eyes remake, for example, a lot of the fans of the original thought the remake was done in good fun. It wasn't a better film, but it was done in good fun. It kind of knew it was a remake, and they did it in such a way where, like I said, this is all based off what I heard from the hardcore fans of those movies. That they did it in such a way where they knew the original existed, and it was just offering a different interpretation for those who wanted to see a different interpretation from the first movie. And here's another. Actually, I have two more examples with this too. When you watch the remake of Shaft with Samuel L. Jackson, the original Shaft from the TV show, the one where Isaac Hayes did the score and stuff. He actually showed up as a different character in the remake, so I thought that was kind of a neat way. And he was actually interacting with the new Shaft, so I thought that was kind of a special thing to see. And also with the Clash of the Titans remake, the little mechanical owl from the original Clash of the Titans, we see it briefly in one scene. I thought that was kind of fun. It's just, like it knew it was a remake. Obviously the new Clash of the Titans wasn't as good, but like we knew watching it, it's just like, oh yeah, that was from the original. That's kind of clever. Um, and this is another one where not a lot of directors who take on remakes tend to take advantage of this. Improve upon any mistakes, even the minor ones that the original has made. Though Rob Zombie attempted this when he remade Halloween, like for example, he thought Dr. Loomis in the original Halloween by John Carpenter, he thought he came off as a drunk too much. I think his other complaint was he didn't like that Michael Myers knew how to drive, I guess. And I guess his other complaint, he had quite a few complaints. I listened to his commentary and his interviews on the remake of Halloween that he did. I guess he didn't like that. Yeah, so he didn't like that he didn't drive. He didn't like how Dr. Loomis kind of came off as this drunk. And I think he also didn't like something else, and it was something pretty big in the original Halloween. So, but I mean, like things like that. Like he went back and really watched the original. He watched it as a fan still, but he took it on this new project in a way where he knew he had to make something new, and he wanted to make sure that he was taking it on and fixing upon even the minor stuff for mistakes. Like things are like, okay, well that's kind of a flaw. That's kind of a flaw. Let's make sure that's better in the remake. I like when people do that because that's a sign that they're trying to make a better product than the first film. And in the end, I think that's kind of an admirable trait with a remake. Like I said, a lot of remakes fail by doing that, but at least they're trying to improve upon something that the original didn't have. So I guess that's kind of the admirable trait behind taking on a remake in that fashion. And then my last point is make sure there's a fun factor to it. Make sure, even if it's a more serious movie, make sure it's fun. I mean, that's something that I think a lot of like really serious movies seem to do in these days is they take it too seriously. I actually think this is one thing that the Clash of the Titans remake failed with is it just took itself too seriously. It had to know that it was a remake. It needed to do something fun. It needed to do something that, like I said, because it already knows it's not an original story. A previous version exists already. That do something fun. Just do. I don't know what more to say than that. So those are my 5 tips. What do you guys think? Are you still kind of in the same boat as me? So remakes are just getting overdone these days. Original ideas need to happen more often. What do you guys think? What are some things also that you think some remakes should be doing more often that they aren't doing? And or even this too, what are some remakes that you actually think are even better than the original, or at least offer something that maybe the original film didn't offer? So those are my 5 points. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you here for the next video.